I grew up in a neighborhood where ambition was something you kept to yourself, not because people would laugh at you, though some would, but because saying you wanted more than what your parents had felt like calling them failures. My dad drove a delivery truck for a regional distribution company. My mother cleaned office buildings at night. They never complained, never made us feel poor, but I understood early that every dollar had a job and there were never enough to go around. Our apartment was on the third floor of a building that always smelled like someone else's cooking. The elevator worked maybe half the time. My bedroom was barely large enough for a twin bed and a desk I'd built from cinder blocks and a piece of plywood. But it was mine, and at night when the building finally got quiet, I could sit at that desk and imagine a different kind of life. I learned to code in high school. Not because we had great computer science classes, we didn't, but because the public library had old desktop computers and free internet. I'd spend hours there after school, teaching myself Python from YouTube tutorials and free online courses. The librarian, a woman named Opal Kincaid, would let me stay past closing time if I helped her update the catalog system. "You're good at this," she told me once, watching me debug a script I'd written to automate her data entry. "You could do something with this." I didn't tell her I was already planning to, that I'd applied to every university within 300 miles that offered full scholarships, that I'd spent my senior year optimizing my application, writing and rewriting essays, building a portfolio of projects I'd completed on borrowed computers and stolen Wi-Fi. When the acceptance letter came from State University, full academic scholarship, 4 years, everything covered except books and living expenses, my mother cried. My father shook my hand and said, "Make it count." I intended to. Freshman orientation was 150 students in an auditorium, all of us pretending we belonged there. Some kids had parents with them, professional cameras taking photos in front of the university seal. Some showed up in cars that cost more than my family made in 2 years. I showed up with everything I owned in 2 duffel bags and a backpack. That's where I met Brent Cormier. He was sitting alone in the 3rd row, scrolling through his phone with the particular intensity of someone avoiding eye contact. He had the same look I probably did. Secondhand clothes, cheap haircut. The specific posture of someone who didn't quite fit, but was determined to fake it. During the break, I sat next to him. "You know where Baker Hall is?" He looked up, surprised anyone was talking to him. "Computer science building?" "Yeah, I've got it on my map. UCS too?" "Yeah." "Full ride?" "Yeah." He nodded. We didn't say anything else, but we'd communicated what mattered. We were the same type. The first month was brutal. Not academically. The classes were hard but manageable. But everything else, figuring out how to eat on $12 a day, learning which dining halls threw out food at closing and which ones locked the dumpsters, discovering that textbooks cost $300 per class and the library only had 2 copies that were always checked out. I got a job at the campus loading dock, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., 4 nights a week, $12 an hour. I'd unload delivery trucks, sort packages, organize inventory. The work was simple and physical, and left me exhausted enough to sleep despite everything. Brent worked at a 24-hour diner on Route 9, just off campus. Graveyard shift, Thursday through Sunday. He'd show up to morning classes smelling like fryer grease and coffee, barely able to keep his eyes open. We'd see each other in the computer lab around 6 a.m., me coming from the loading dock, him coming from the diner. We'd work on problem sets together, share notes, quiz each other for exams. Neither of us talked about being tired or hungry or stressed. We just worked. The computer science department had open lab access. 24 hours, 7 days a week, as long as you had a student ID. It became my second bedroom. I'd go there between classes after my shift, whenever my apartment felt too small or too depressing. The lab had heating, decent internet, and vending machines that sometimes malfunctioned and gave you free snacks. Brent was there just as often. We fell into a rhythm. Not exactly friendship at first, more like mutual recognition. Two people running the same race, acknowledging each other at the water stations. It was during one of those early morning lab sessions, halfway through freshman year, that Brent first started talking about inefficiencies. We were working on a data structures assignment, implementing a priority queue. Brent kept getting distracted, pulling up the university housing portal, clicking through the interface. "This is garbage," he muttered. "What?" "The housing system. Look at this." He turned his screen toward me. "You can't see real-time availability. You can't filter by actual preferences. You just submit a form ranking your top 5 choices and hope. It's literally random. It's a lottery system. It's a broken system. There's no reason it should be random. They have all the data, student preferences, room availability, even compatibility algorithms from the roommate matching survey. But the interface is so bad they can't actually use any of it effectively." I looked at the portal. He was right. It was terrible. Forms from the 90s, broken links, error messages, and Comic Sans. "Every university has terrible software," I said. "That's my point. Every university, it's a universal problem, and they all pay thousands of dollars for enterprise solutions that don't work because they're designed by people who've never actually been students or worked in administration." He pulled up 3 other university housing portals. All of them were equally terrible in slightly different ways. "Someone should fix this," he said. That was the moment, I think. Not when we decided to start a company, that came later. But when the idea planted itself. When we both recognized that we could see problems other people couldn't, and that we might be capable of solving them. Sophomore year, we started small. Brent had the vision. He understood institutional problems, bureaucratic inefficiencies, what people actually needed. I had the implementation skills. I could build things, make them work, turn abstract ideas into functioning code. Our first project was a browser extension for the housing portal. It scraped real-time availability data, showed actual room status, let students track openings and set alerts. We built it over winter break, both of us staying on campus because going home cost money we didn't have. We posted it on the university subreddit with a simple description: housing lottery tool, see real availability, get notifications when your preferred rooms open up. Within 24 hours, 500 students had installed it. Within a week, 2,000. The housing office noticed. We got a cease and desist letter demanding we take it down, citing unauthorized access to university systems and potential violations of student privacy. We ignored it. The data was publicly available. We were just aggregating it. And student privacy wasn't at risk because we weren't collecting or storing personal information. They couldn't actually stop us. The worst they could do was block our scraping, but that would mean shutting down public access to the housing portal entirely. They weren't willing to do that. Instead, they invited us to a meeting. The director of housing was a man named Vaughn Tolland. He was in his 50s, wore a suit that had gone out of style a decade ago, and had the exhausted look of someone who had been fighting university bureaucracy for too long. "This tool," he said, holding up a printout of our extension, "it's creating chaos. Students are camping the housing portal 24 hours a day. Our servers are overwhelmed. We're getting complaints from IT." "Your servers can't handle normal traffic," Brent said. "That's not our problem." I thought Vaughn was going to kick us out. Instead, he laughed. "You're right. Our systems are ancient. The portal crashes twice a semester under normal conditions. But that's what we have, and you're making it worse." "So upgrade your systems," Brent said. "With what budget? Do you know what enterprise software costs?" We requested funding for a housing management system 3 years ago. The quote was $400,000. The university said no. Brent and I looked at each other. We could build you something better for a tenth of that, Brent said. Vaughn raised an eyebrow. You're sophomores. So you're proposing to build enterprise-level administrative software with no professional experience, no company, no track record. We built the extension in 2 weeks, I said. It handles 2,000 users with zero server costs because it's entirely client-side. We understand your constraints because we're students. We know what works and what doesn't. Vaughn studied us for a long moment. I can't hire you officially, university policy, but if you wanted to build a prototype, something I could show to the provost to demonstrate what's possible, I could probably find a small budget for a proof of concept. How small? Brent asked. $3,000. We built the prototype in 6 weeks. A complete housing management system, student preferences, real-time availability, automated matching algorithms, administrator dashboard, analytics reporting. We worked every night after our shifts, fueled by a vending machine coffee and the knowledge that this could be real. Vaughn presented it to the provost. The provost loved it. The university agreed to pilot it for the next housing lottery, and they paid us $15,000 for the full implementation. That was the moment Campus Core stopped being an idea and became real. We expanded from there. Registration system, financial aid management, campus job board, every administrative function that the university handled poorly, we built a better version. By junior year, we had working systems deployed across 3 different administrative departments. Students loved them because they actually worked. Administrators loved them because they saved time and reduced complaints. We were getting emails from other universities asking if our tools were available. That's when we realized this could be more than a side project. We'd spent 2 years building solutions to real problems. We had working software, happy users, and a clear market. Other universities had the same problems. They'd pay for solutions. But to sell to other universities, we needed to be a real company. We needed legal structure, liability protection, contracts, insurance. We needed to incorporate. The university's Entrepreneurship Center offered free consultations for student startups. We made an appointment with Professor Carmen Delacroix, who ran the program. Her office was in the business school, a building I'd never had reason to enter before. Everything was newer, cleaner, better funded than the engineering buildings where I spent most of my time. Professor Delacroix was sharp, efficient, intimidating in the way of people who'd spent decades in boardrooms. She looked at our portfolio of work, our documentation, our user numbers. "This is impressive," she said. "You've essentially built an enterprise software company without realizing it, but you need to formalize everything before you can scale." She spent an hour walking us through the requirements. LLC formation, operating agreements, intellectual property assignment, liability insurance, contract templates, corporate bank accounts. I took notes on everything. Brent asked questions about tax implications, funding options, equity structure. "You'll need to decide on ownership structure," Professor Delacroix said. "Most startups do equal splits between founders, but that can create problems down the line. Investors prefer clear decision-making authority. One founder with controlling interest, usually 51% or more." "We're equal partners," I said. "Legally, yes, but on paper someone needs to be the registered agent. The person who signs contracts, handles legal documents, interfaces with banks and investors. It's cleaner if that person also holds majority stake." She pulled out a sample operating agreement. "See here, majority stakeholder, registered agent, primary signatory. Makes due diligence easier when you're raising money or signing major contracts." Brent and I looked at each other. We hadn't thought about this. In our minds, everything was 50-50. We'd built this together. "Does it matter who?" I asked. "Not really. Some investors care about founder backgrounds, criminal records, credit history, prior business failures. But assuming you both have clean records, it's just a formality. Any issues? Brent asked. Traffic violations, conduct problems, anything like that? I shook my head. Nothing. I got written up freshman year, Brent said. Roommate noise complaint. Went on my residence life record. That won't matter for LLC registration, Professor Delacroix said. But if you're concerned about investor perception, you might want the person with the completely clean record as the public face. Brent turned to me. You should do it. You're better with the technical documentation anyway. If investors ask detailed questions about architecture, you can answer them. I'm better at the business development side, client relationships, pitching, negotiating contracts. It made sense. We were playing to our strengths. I handled technical, he handled business. The paperwork was just formalization of what we already did. Plus, Brent said, your academic record is better. Dean's list every semester. I'm doing fine, but you're the star student, better optics. I didn't care about optics, but I understood his logic, and it was just paperwork. We'd still split everything 50-50. That was the agreement, verbal but solid. We were partners. Okay, I said. I'll be the registered agent. We filed the incorporation papers that week. Campus Corps LLC, registered in Delaware for tax purposes. Registered agent and majority stakeholder listed as me. Operating agreement specified my 60% stake, Brent's 40%, with clear provisions for equal profit distribution and joint decision-making authority. The lawyer who processed our paperwork said it was a standard structure. Clean, investor-friendly, properly documented. We celebrated by ordering pizza, real pizza, not the dollar slices we usually ate. Sat in the computer lab at midnight, eating and planning our next steps. This is really happening, Brent said. Yeah. We're actually going to do this, build something real. I believed him, believed in him, in us, in what we were building together. That belief would turn out to be the most expensive mistake of my life. We graduated in May. Neither of us walked at commencement. We were too busy. 3 universities had expressed serious interest in Campus Corps. We'd spent graduation weekend driving to meetings, pitching to IT directors and provosts, trying to look professional in our one decent outfit each. The presentations went well. We had working demos, case studies from our pilot programs, testimonials from administrators and students. We knew our software inside and out, could answer any technical question, could speak to the real problems we were solving, but we were also obviously kids, 22 years old, no business experience, running a company out of a computer lab. Send us a proposal, they all said. Translation, we're interested, but need to see if you're serious. We sent proposals, detailed implementation plans, pricing structures, support commitments, timeline projections. We made ourselves look as professional as possible on paper. One school responded first, a small state university upstate, about 15,000 students. Their IT director was a woman named Piper Whitlock. She'd been in the role for 6 months, brought in to modernize systems that hadn't been updated since the early 2000s. She called us directly. Your housing system, can it handle our scale? Yes, I said. We've tested it at 20,000 users. 15,000 is well within capacity. What about customization? Our housing lottery has specific rules about priority registration for different student groups. Completely configurable. We can map any priority system you have. Support? If something breaks during lottery week, what happens? 24-hour support during critical periods. Direct access to both founders. If there's an issue, we fix it immediately. She was quiet for a moment. What's this going to cost? Brent and I had spent days on pricing, Too high and we'd scare them off. Too low and they wouldn't take us seriously. 25,000 for the first year, Brent said. That includes full implementation, training, customization, and support. Renewal at 15,000 annually after that. Another pause. Send me a contract. We had a contract template from Professor Delacroix. We customized it, sent it over, held our breath. She signed it 3 days later. We had our first real client. $25,000. More money than either of us had ever seen. We celebrated at an actual restaurant. Not fast food, not the dining hall. A real Italian place downtown with tablecloths and appetizers. We ordered too much food, couldn't finish it, asked for boxes. Walking back to our apartment, we'd moved in together after graduation, splitting a 2-bedroom in the cheapest building we could find. Brent said, "This is just the start. We're going to change how universities work. Make systems that actually serve students instead of just managing them." I believed him completely. The implementation for our first client took 3 months. We worked 18-hour days, building out custom features, integrating with their existing systems, training their staff. The go-live was during summer housing lottery. I monitored the servers all night, watched the traffic, the database performance, the error logs. Everything held steady. No crashes, no major bugs, just students successfully selecting housing through a system that actually worked. At 6 a.m., Piper sent us an email. "Smoothest housing lottery we've ever had. Students are thrilled. Administrators are thrilled. I'm writing testimonials for you right now." That testimonial landed us 2 more clients by fall, then 3 more by spring. By the end of our first year, we had 6 university clients and were projecting $200,000 in revenue for year 2. We moved into a real office, basement space in a converted industrial building, but it had dedicated internet and enough room for us to hire help. We brought on 2 part-time developers, both recent grads from our CS program who needed work. We started paying ourselves actual salaries. Not much, $30,000 each, but it was more than we'd ever made. Enough to stop working night jobs. Enough to focus entirely on campus core. Everything was growing. Client list, revenue, team size, product capabilities. We were building exactly what we dreamed about in that computer lab at 6 a.m., exhausted and hopeful and certain we could change things. I should have noticed when things started to shift. But I was too buried in work, too focused on keeping everything running, too trusting. The first sign was subtle. Brent started handling more of the administrative work. Finances, bookkeeping, corporate records. He said it made sense because I was better at the technical side, at client implementations and product development. It did make sense. Division of labor, playing to strengths. He set up our accounting systems, chose the bookkeeping software, established the workflows, managed the bank accounts. I had access to everything. I was the majority stakeholder after all, but I rarely looked. I trusted him to handle it correctly. The second sign was the investor conversation. January of our second year, we got contacted by a venture capital firm. They specialized in education technology, had a portfolio of successful startups, wanted to meet with us about potential investment. The partner was Graham Northcott. He took us to lunch at a place where the menu didn't list prices, and the waiter knew him by name. We were clearly out of our depth, but trying to act like we belonged. Graham asked smart questions: market size, competitive landscape, customer acquisition costs, lifetime value metrics, scaling strategy. Brent handled most of the answers. He'd prepared for this, had all the numbers memorized, painted a compelling picture of Campus Core's potential. National platform, hundreds of universities, eventual integration with federal systems. I added technical details where relevant. Architecture choices, scalability, security measures. Graham listened carefully, took notes, asked follow-up questions that showed he actually understood what we were building. At the end of lunch, he said, "This is interesting. Send me your corporate documents, financials, cap table. Let's see if there's alignment." We sent everything that afternoon. Articles of incorporation, operating agreement, bank statements, revenue projections, client contracts. 3 days later, Graham called. "We're going to pass," he said. Brent's face went white. "Can you tell us why?" "The corporate structure is messy. Too much informal process, not enough documentation. Your operating agreement has provisions for equal decision-making despite unequal equity, which creates potential deadlock scenarios. Your financial records are adequate but not audit-ready. Come back when you've professionalized your governance." He hung up. Brent was furious. Not at Graham, at our setup. At me, implicitly, for not having pushed for more formal systems earlier. "We need to fix this," he said. "Real accounting, real corporate governance, real documentation for every decision." "We have accounting," I said. "We use QuickBooks. We need audit trails, everything time-stamped, everything logged, everything documented. If we want institutional investors, we need to operate like an institution." He was right. We'd been running Campus Core like an extension of our college projects. Informal, trusting, based on handshake agreements and mutual understanding. That needed to change if we wanted to grow. We hired a professional bookkeeper, set up proper financial systems with documented workflows, started keeping detailed records of every transaction, every decision, every client interaction. Brent took the lead on implementing these systems. It made sense. He was handling the business operations anyway. I was focused on product development, on keeping clients happy, on shipping features. I should have paid more attention. Should have reviewed the systems he was building, verified the processes, checked the documentation. But I trusted him. We were partners. We'd built this together from nothing. Why would I question his work? The third sign was so subtle I almost missed it entirely. We were in the office late one night, both working on different projects. I was debugging a deployment issue. Brent was at his desk, doing something with spreadsheets. I went to grab coffee from the kitchen. When I came back, Brent was on my computer. "Hey," I said, "what are you doing?" He looked up, startled. "Oh, I needed to check something in the production database. My credentials weren't working, so I used yours. Hope that's okay." "Sure, yeah. What's wrong with your credentials?" "Don't know. Probably just need to reset them. I'll do it tomorrow." He closed the window he'd been in, went back to his own desk. I didn't think much of it. We shared access to everything. We were both administrators, both had root access, both could do anything in any system. Shared credentials made sense for efficiency. Looking back, that was the moment. That was when he got what he needed. But I didn't know that then. I just went back to debugging my deployment issue, drank my coffee, worked until 2 a.m. like I did most nights. We landed our biggest client in March. A state university system, 3 campuses, 40,000 total students. They wanted a full platform implementation, housing, registration, financial aid, campus jobs, everything. The contract was worth $500,000 over 2 years. We hired 4 more developers, moved to a bigger office with actual conference rooms and furniture that wasn't from Craigslist. Started paying ourselves $70,000 annually. We were sitting in the new conference room, both of us staring at the signed contract, when Brent said, "We actually fucking made it." I looked at him, my best friend, my business partner, the person I'd been through everything with for the past 4 years. "Yeah," I said. "We did." I meant it. In that moment, I believed we'd built something permanent, something that would last. I was wrong. The investigation started on a Wednesday morning in April. 2 years and 11 months after we'd incorporated Campus Core. I got to the office at 8 a.m., earlier than usual. I wanted to finish a deployment before the team arrived, needed quiet time to concentrate. The door was unlocked. That was strange. I had the only keys besides Brent, and he wasn't a morning person. I walked in and found 2 people in suits standing in our conference room, going through our filing cabinets. "Who are you?" I asked. They turned. Both showed identification. One was from the State Attorney General's Office, Economic Crimes Unit. The other was from the University System's Office of Inspector General. "Are you the owner of Campus Core LLC?" the AG investigator asked. Her name was Maya Fenwick, according to her badge. "I'm the registered agent and majority stakeholder, yes. What's this about?" "We're executing a search warrant as part of an investigation into allegations of contract fraud, misappropriation of state resources, and falsification of business records." I felt my stomach drop. "What? We haven't done anything." "You have the right to have an attorney present during questioning," the Inspector General said. His name was Keegan Sutter. "We recommend you exercise that right." "I don't need an attorney. We haven't done anything wrong." "That's your choice. But we're going to be seizing records and conducting interviews. You may want legal representation." I called the business attorney we'd used for incorporation, a guy named Jasper Markham. He said he'd come down, but it would be at least an hour. Until then, don't answer any questions. I sat in my own office, watching through the glass walls as they went through everything. They had boxes, multiple cardboard file boxes. They were photographing documents, imaging hard drives, copying files from our server. Brent arrived around 9:30. He looked shocked to see the investigators. "What's going on?" he asked me. "They say we're being investigated for fraud." "What? That's insane. We haven't—" Maya Fenwick interrupted. "Mr. Cormier, we need to speak with you separately." They put him in the conference room, put me in one of the small offices we use for phone calls, kept us separated. The questions started simple. How long had we been operating? Who were our clients? What services did we provide? Then they got more specific. Had we used university servers for development after graduation? Yes, I admitted. We'd had access through our student accounts, which remained active for 6 months after graduation. We'd used university computational resources during that period. But that was normal. Half the student startups did the same thing. The university even encouraged it through the Entrepreneurship Center. Had we represented Campus Core as university-affiliated when pitching to clients? No. We'd been clear we were an independent company, founded by alumni. Had we ever submitted false invoices? Absolutely not. Every invoice was accurate. Had we created multiple versions of financial records? No. We had one set of books, maintained by our bookkeeper. Had we backdated documents or falsified transaction records? Never. Maya slid a folder across the table. We've recovered server logs showing access to university systems using your credentials, continuing for 18 months after graduation. Not 6 months, 18. I opened the folder, saw screenshots of login records, timestamps, IP addresses, my username, accessing university servers long past when my student access should have expired. That's not possible, I said. My student account was deactivated. I couldn't access those systems even if I wanted to. Yet these logs exist, authenticated access, using your credentials. Then someone else was using my credentials. Who would have your login information? Only Brent. I gave him my password junior year when we were testing the prototype, but that was years ago. She made a note. Anyone else? No. She pulled out more documents. Email threads where I'd allegedly described Campus Core as a university-sponsored initiative to potential clients. Invoices with dates that didn't match our actual delivery timelines. financial records showing different revenue numbers than what I'd seen. "I didn't write these emails," I said. "These aren't our real invoices. Someone's fabricated this. We have metadata, email headers, IP addresses, authentication logs. Everything traces back to accounts under your name and control. Then the metadata is false too, or someone had access to my accounts." Jasper finally arrived. He looked at the evidence, and his expression went very still. "Don't say anything else," he told me. The investigators spent 6 hours in our office. They took copies of everything, every hard drive, every document, every file. They interviewed our employees, asking about financial practices, client communications, my behavior. When they finally left, it was after 4 p.m. Jasper and I sat in the conference room, surrounded by empty spaces where our equipment used to be. "This is bad," he said. "They have substantial documentation suggesting systematic fraud, and all of it points to you specifically." "I didn't do any of this." "I believe you, but that doesn't matter. What matters is what they can prove, and right now, they have server logs, emails, financial records, all apparently created or accessed by you. Brent had access to everything. He could have created this. Why would he?" That was the question that broke me. Why would my best friend, my partner, the person I'd trusted completely, manufacture evidence to frame me for fraud? "I don't know," I said, but even as I said it, I was starting to understand. The news broke that evening. Local paper first. Local tech startup under investigation for fraud. Then the university paper, former students accused of defrauding university system. Then the tech blogs, education startup campus core raided in fraud probe. The story was everywhere by morning, and the story was clear. 2 former students had used stolen university resources to build a company, misrepresented their university affiliation to win contracts, submitted false invoices to inflate revenue, and defrauded the state university system. Except the coverage wasn't about 2 students, it was about 1. Every article mentioned me by name as the registered owner and primary stakeholder. Brent was barely mentioned, described only as a minority partner who had cooperated with investigators. My phone started ringing, reporters wanting comments, former classmates wanting to know what happened, clients demanding explanations. I didn't answer any of them. The university issued a statement. They were shocked and disappointed by the allegations. They were cooperating fully with investigators. They had immediately suspended all business relationships with the individuals involved. Our clients started canceling contracts. The state university system first, citing the investigation. Then the others, one by one, invoking breach of contract clauses related to criminal activity. By the end of the week, we had no clients left. I tried to reach Brent, called him 15 times. He didn't answer. I drove to his apartment. He didn't answer the door. Finally, I got a text. "Lawyers said no contact. I'm sorry, this isn't what I wanted." That's when I really started to understand. Jasper got copies of the evidence the investigators had collected. We spent 3 days going through it, piece by piece, looking for proof of fabrication. The server logs were real, technically accurate with my credentials and my IP address, but I hadn't made those accesses. Someone else had, using login information I'd given to Brent years ago. The emails existed in university servers. They'd been sent from my student email account, but I'd never written them. Someone had accessed my account, which I rarely checked after graduating, and sent them without my knowledge. The financial records were more complicated. There were multiple versions in our server backups. One version matched what I'd seen, what our bookkeeper had maintained. The other versions showed inflated revenue, backdated contracts, falsified invoices. "Who set up your backup systems?" Jasper asked. Brent. He handled all the server administration when we formalized our processes. Who had access to create these alternate files? Both of us. We both had root access to everything. Jasper was quiet for a long time. He framed you. Deliberately, methodically, over months, maybe longer. He planted evidence, created false documentation, built a narrative where you're the sole perpetrator and he's the innocent partner who discovered it. But why? Because whistleblowers get immunity, and if you're the only one accused, he's the only one left to salvage the company. I sat with that, tried to process it. My best friend, 4 years of partnership, everything we'd built together. Can we prove it? I asked. Prove what? That he had access? He's supposed to have access. He's your business partner. That he created the false files? They have his digital signature, too, but he can claim he was documenting what he found. That he's lying? About what specifically? About all of it. We'd need evidence, direct proof he fabricated documents, testimony from someone who saw him do it, something concrete. We didn't have that. What we had was suspicion, logic, and the sick feeling in my gut that I'd been betrayed at a level I couldn't fully comprehend. The Attorney General's office took 8 months to make a decision. During those 8 months, I lived in a strange limbo. Not quite accused, not quite cleared. The investigation was ongoing. The media coverage had moved on to other stories. But my name was permanently associated with fraud. I couldn't get another job in tech. Every interview ended the same way. They'd Google my name, find the articles, politely tell me they'd decided to go with another candidate. I couldn't afford rent. Moved back in with my parents, sleeping in my childhood bedroom, 23 years old and a complete failure. I couldn't pay Jasper. He took payment plans, reduced his rates, but I still owed him $60,000 in legal fees. Meanwhile, Brent was being celebrated. He gave an interview to a startup podcast, talked about discovering financial irregularities, struggling with the decision to report his partner, ultimately choosing integrity over friendship. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, he said. But I couldn't be part of defrauding universities. Education is too important. He appeared on a panel about ethics in entrepreneurship, shared his story as a cautionary tale about the importance of governance and oversight. He relaunched Campus Core under a new name, EduCore Solutions. Same technology, same code base, which he had legal rights to as the minority stakeholder, but a new company, a new brand, a new narrative. The narrative, whistleblower rebuilds company on foundation of integrity after exposing fraud. He raised $500,000 in seed funding within 6 months of the launch. I saw the announcement online, saw the investor quotes praising his courage and ethical leadership, saw the press coverage describing him as a model entrepreneur who'd sacrificed personal relationships for principle. I read it all sitting in my childhood bedroom and felt something fundamental break inside me. Not anger, not even betrayal, just a cold, empty recognition of what had happened. Brent hadn't made a mistake, hadn't panicked, hadn't been forced into a difficult choice. He'd executed a plan, a careful, deliberate plan to remove me from the company we'd built together, take sole ownership, and position himself as a hero in the process. And it had worked perfectly. The AG's office finally announced their decision in December. They were declining to pursue criminal charges. The evidence was inconclusive, and they couldn't prove criminal intent beyond a reasonable doubt. But declining to prosecute wasn't the same as exoneration. The statement noted that significant irregularities had been found, that civil remedies remained available, and that the investigation had revealed serious concerns about business practices. The state university system filed a civil suit 2 weeks later. They wanted all contracted funds returned, plus legal fees, plus punitive damages. We settled out of court. Campus Core LLC was dissolved. All remaining assets liquidated. The $60,000 in our bank account went to the university system. I was personally liable for the remainder, $140,000. Total debt, including legal fees, $265,000. I was 23 years old. No job, no prospects, no way to pay. The settlement included monthly payment plans I could barely afford. $500 a month for the next 20 years. I got a job at a logistics software company 3 states away. They needed a mid-level developer, didn't do deep background checks, paid enough to cover the settlement payments with a little left over for rent. I moved to a city where nobody knew me, rented a studio apartment, bought minimal furniture from thrift stores, existed. Every morning I woke up, went to work, wrote code. Every evening I came home, ate something cheap, went to sleep. On weekends I did laundry, bought groceries, sat in my apartment. I stopped following tech news, stopped checking on EduCore, stopped thinking about what I'd lost, or tried to stop thinking about it. But at night, lying in the dark, I'd replay everything. Every decision, every moment I should have seen it coming, every sign I'd missed. The way Brent had suggested I be the registered agent. The way he'd insisted on handling all the financial systems. The way he'd accessed my computer that night, claiming his credentials weren't working. He'd been building the trap for months. Maybe from the beginning. Maybe from the moment Professor Delacroix suggested someone should hold majority stake. Had we ever really been friends? Or had I just been useful? I didn't have an answer. I just had debt, a mediocre job, and a growing understanding that trust was the most dangerous thing you could give another person. 2 years passed like that. Work, payment plans, existence. Then my grandfather died. I hadn't thought about him in years. He'd lived in Montana, worked as a mining engineer, kept to himself. My father barely spoke to him. Some old argument about my grandmother's death. Family politics I'd never understood. I'd met him 3 times growing up. Remembered a quiet man who'd showed me his workshop once. Let me use his tools to build a wooden box. His attorney called me in March. Estate matter, needed to be handled in person. Could I fly out for the will reading? I assumed it was a formality. Maybe a small inheritance, a few $1,000s. I bought the cheapest flight I could find, took 2 days off work. The attorney's office was in a small mountain town, population, maybe 5,000, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and newcomers were noticeable. There were 4 of us for the will reading, me, my father, my aunt, and the attorney, a woman named Quinn Abernathy who looked like she'd been practicing law since before I was born. Your grandfather's estate is fairly straightforward, she said. Savings and investments total approximately $200,000, to be split equally between his 2 children. She nodded at my father and aunt. They both looked relieved. Neither of them had much money. However, Quinn continued, there's one additional asset that falls outside the primary estate division. She slid a folder across the table to me, just to me. A company called Radley Industrial Technologies, LLC, incorporated in Montana in 1987, currently active but dormant. It holds no operating revenue and maintains no employees. Its sole purpose is ownership of intellectual property. I opened the folder. Incorporation. Documents from 1987. Patent certificates. Maintenance fee receipts going back decades. Your grandfather founded this company to develop and protect certain technological innovations he worked on after retirement. Most of the patents have expired. 3 remain active. I started reading the patent descriptions. Dense technical language, methods and systems for data processing. Then I saw it. U.S. Patent 5,243,877. Method for distributed data validation in multi-tenant enterprise systems. Filed October 1988. Granted March 1991. Extended December 2008 for additional 14 years. Expiration date, March 2022. I read the technical description, read it again, read it a third time. It was broad, incredibly broad. The kind of patent that shouldn't exist, but did. Granted back when the patent office was still figuring out software. It covered fundamental architecture for distributed data validation, for multi-tenant systems, for exactly the kind of enterprise software that Campus Core and EduCore had been built on. Why am I getting this, I asked. Why not my father? Quinn consulted the will. Your grandfather left specific instructions. The business entity Radley Industrial Technologies, including all associated assets and intellectual property, passes exclusively to his grandson. The will doesn't explain the reasoning, but the instruction is legally clear. My father looked annoyed. That company could be worth something. It could be, Quinn agreed. But it was your father's property to dispose of as he wished, and he wished to leave it to his grandson. She had me sign transfer documents, ownership papers, corporate filings. I left the office with a folder full of documents I didn't fully understand yet. I went back to my hotel room, spread everything across the bed, read every page. The patent was airtight, broad enough to cover modern cloud architecture, specific enough to have survived re-examination twice. Extended in 2008, my grandfather must have known it had value, even if he never monetized it. I pulled up EduCore's website on my laptop, read their technical documentation, their architecture diagrams, their blog posts about their innovative approach to multi-tenant data isolation. Every major architectural component violated the patent. Not peripherally, fundamentally. The distributed validation system, the tenant isolation mechanisms, the real-time synchronization protocols. All of it was covered by U.S. Patent 5,243,877. All of it was owned by Radley Industrial Technologies, which was now owned by me. I sat in that hotel room for 6 hours, reading and rereading everything, making sure I understood, making sure I wasn't seeing something that wasn't there, but it was there. Clear, documented, legally protected. Brent had built EduCore on top of patented technology I now owned, and he had no idea. I flew back home, called a patent attorney, a specialist who handled IP litigation. His name was Holden Leduc, and his consultation fee was $500 for an hour. I paid it, showed him everything. He spent 3 hours analyzing the patent, EduCore's documentation, their public technical specifications. This is enforceable, he finally said. The patent is valid. It's been upheld in litigation before, survived re-examination, and EduCore's architecture clearly infringes. Not just superficially. Core architectural components. What can I do? You can send a cease and desist, demand licensing fees, sue for infringement, seek an injunction to halt their operations. If I sued, what would happen? Assuming you win, financial damages based on their revenue. Possibly injunctive relief, ordering them to stop using the infringing technology. Given how fundamental these components are to their system, an injunction would effectively shut them down. How long until the patent expires? He checked the dates. March 2022, 14 months from now. And if I wait, if I let them keep building, keep growing, keep signing clients, then sue right before expiration? Holden looked at me carefully. That would be strategically aggressive. The damages would be much larger, the disruption more severe, but legally permissible. Would it work? Depends on what you mean by work. Would you win the case? Almost certainly. Would you destroy their business? Very possibly. Would it feel like justice? He paused, That's not a legal question. I hired him on retainer, paid money I didn't have, started documenting everything. I spent the next year building my case while Brent built his company. I watched EduCore grow, watched them raise a Series A, $2 million, watched them hire employees, open real offices, sign contracts with major universities. I watched Brent give interviews about ethical entrepreneurship, watched him speak on panels about corporate governance, watched him tell our story, his version, where he was the hero, who'd exposed corruption, and I waited. I documented everything. Every technical specification EduCore published, every blog post about their architecture, every case study showing their system in action, cross-referenced everything with the patent claims, built comprehensive infringement analyses. I hired a digital forensics expert to re-examine the evidence from the original investigation. Cost me $12,000 spread across 6 months of work. He found what I suspected. The fraudulent documents had metadata inconsistencies, creation timestamps that didn't match modification timestamps, workstation signatures that didn't align with the IP addresses supposedly used. The documents had been created on one machine, then transferred using my credentials and backdated. This is sophisticated, the forensic expert said. Whoever did this knew what they were doing, but they made small mistakes, millisecond-level discrepancies that normal investigation wouldn't catch. Can you prove who created them? I can prove they weren't created the way the investigation claimed. I can show they were likely fabricated. But definitive attribution to a specific person? That's harder. Both of you had system access. It wasn't perfect proof, but it was enough to raise serious questions about what had actually happened. I compiled everything into a comprehensive archive: patent documentation, infringement analysis, forensic examination of the original fraud evidence, timeline showing Brent's subsequent activities. All of it authenticated, notarized, time-stamped. Then I waited for the perfect moment. EduCore announced their Series B in September, $8 million, led by a major Silicon Valley firm. The press release described them as a leader in ethical education technology. They announced a public launch event for November 15th, a major demonstration of their new national platform. Live presentation to investors, university administrators, and education press. Brent would be on stage, demonstrating how EduCore was revolutionizing higher education administration. On November 8th, 1 week before the launch, I filed suit. Radley Industrial Technologies, LLC versus EduCore Solutions, LLC. Patent infringement. Seeking injunctive relief and monetary damages. Filed in Montana federal court, where Radley was incorporated. The lawsuit hit the news within hours. Dormant patent used to target growing edtech startup. EduCore's attorneys responded immediately. Motion to dismiss, arguing the patent was overly broad, outdated, and invalid. My attorney filed opposition. The patent had been upheld multiple times, had survived several re-examination requests, was presumed valid until proven otherwise. The court scheduled a preliminary hearing for November 18th, 3 days after EduCore's launch event. Brent's attorneys called, wanted to settle, offered $50,000 to make it go away. I told Holden to refuse, and to make sure they knew I'd be attending the launch event. November 15th arrived. The event was at a downtown conference hotel. 200 people, open bar, catered food. Big screens showing EduCore's interface, customer testimonials, growth projections. I wore the one suit I owned, bought years ago for college interviews. Sat in the back row. Nobody recognized me. The presentation started at 7. Brent took the stage in an expensive suit, looking confident and polished. He talked about vision, about ethics, about transforming education through technology. Some of you know our origin story, sure, he said. how this company was rebuilt from difficult circumstances, how choosing integrity over convenience shaped our culture. That foundation of ethical practice isn't just words, it's who we are. People nodded, appreciative. Tonight we're launching EduCore National, a platform serving over 200 universities and 1 million students. This isn't just software, it's a commitment to doing things the right way. The demo started. Live data, real universities, everything working seamlessly. It was beautiful, technically impressive, everything Campus Core should have become, everything we could have built together. Brent opened for questions. Investors asked about revenue, growth, competition. He handled everything smoothly. Then someone asked about the lawsuit. "We're aware of the patent claim," Brent said calmly. "It's an opportunistic attempt to extract value from a defunct patent. Our attorneys are confident it'll be dismissed. This kind of thing is common in tech." "But the hearing is in 3 days," a reporter said. "And we're fully prepared. The patent in question is from 1988. It has no relevance to modern cloud architecture. We'll demonstrate that in court." I stood up, walked to the audience microphone. Brent saw me. His expression froze for just a moment before he recovered. "I have a question," I said. The room went completely silent. People started pulling out phones, Googling, making connections. "The patent you're calling opportunistic, can you explain why EduCore's distributed validation system uses the exact architectural pattern described in Claim 17? Brent's smile stayed fixed. "I don't discuss pending litigation in public." "Fair. Different question then. Can you explain why the server logs from April 2020, the ones you gave to investigators, show creation timestamps 9 hours before their supposed discovery time?" His attorney stood. "This is inappropriate. Security. I'm just asking questions, like you asked when you reported the fraud. When you provided all that documentation showing I was the sole perpetrator. Remember that?" People were recording. Every phone in the room was pointed at us. "The forensic analysis is public record now," I continued. "Exhibit C in the patent case. The metadata shows those documents were created and backdated from your workstation. Not mine, yours." "Remove him," Brent said. Security started toward me. I didn't resist, but I added one more thing. "The patent expires March 2022, 14 months away. After that, you can use it freely. But until then, every client contract you signed is built on infringement, and the injunction hearing is Tuesday." They escorted me out while the room erupted behind me. I sat in my car in the parking lot, hands shaking, and waited. The story hit within an hour. Patent dispute disrupts EduCore launch event. Then people started digging into the forensic evidence, started asking questions about the original investigation. By midnight, new questions raised about EduCore founders' fraud claims. By morning, whistleblower story under scrutiny after forensic analysis. The preliminary hearing was Tuesday. Both legal teams appeared. 5 attorneys for EduCore, looking expensive and confident. Holden and me, looking significantly less expensive. The judge reviewed the patent, reviewed EduCore's technical documentation, reviewed the infringement analysis. "This appears to be valid infringement," he said. "The patent is presumed valid unless proven otherwise. The architectural similarities are substantial." EduCore's lead attorney stood. "Your Honor, we filed for inter partes review with the USPTO. We believe the patent should be invalidated." "That's your right, but until the patent is invalidated, it's legally enforceable. The infringement analysis appears credible." He looked at EduCore's team. "Do you dispute the technical findings?" A pause. "We believe the patent is overly broad." "That's an argument for invalidation, but do you dispute that your system uses similar architectural patterns?" Longer pause. "The patterns are common in modern cloud architecture." "Which may be true, But this patent predates modern cloud architecture and covers those patterns. Absent invalidation, you're infringing, he ruled from the bench. I'm granting preliminary injunction, EduCore. Solutions shall cease all operations using the disputed technology pending resolution of the patent's validity. EduCore's attorney went pale. Your Honor, that would shut down the entire company. We have contractual obligations. Then you should have performed patent due diligence. Injunction granted, effective immediately. The order was entered that afternoon. By evening, EduCore's investors had released a statement. They were reassessing their position based on new information. By the next morning, 3 university clients had suspended their contracts. By the end of the week, all of them had. I watched it unfold from my apartment, watched the news coverage, the investor statements, the campus newspaper articles, watched Brent give interviews, trying to explain, to control the narrative. But the forensic evidence was public now. People were asking questions. The Attorney General's office announced they were reviewing new information regarding the 2020 investigation. 2 weeks later, they reopened the case, this time investigating Brent. They had the forensic analysis showing document fabrication. They had testimony from the original investigators admitting they'd relied entirely on Brent's documentation. They had evidence the discovery had been orchestrated. Building a fraud case would be difficult, but they had enough for false statements to investigators, evidence tampering, possibly conspiracy. Brent was arrested at his office in January, in front of his remaining employees. Cameras caught it all. The media coverage was extensive. Former whistleblower arrested for evidence fabrication. His investors withdrew immediately. The company dissolved within a month. The technology was sold in asset liquidation. A competitor bought it for $200,000, less than 5% of EduCore's last valuation. I didn't bid, didn't want any part of it. The trial took 18 months. I testified about our partnership, about the setup, about discovering too late that I'd been framed. Brent's attorney tried to paint me as vindictive, as using the lawsuit to destroy him. You inherited this patent specifically to target Mr. Cormier, didn't you? She asked. No, I inherited it because my grandfather left it to me. What I did with it was protect intellectual property being infringed. But you waited until right before his major launch. I waited until the infringement was substantial. If I'd filed earlier, he could have pivoted his architecture. I wanted to ensure everyone understood what he'd built on stolen technology. Stolen? Unlicensed use of patented technology is theft of intellectual property. The jury convicted him on 3 counts: false statements to investigators, evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, 4 years in federal prison, eligible for parole in 2. I didn't attend the sentencing, read about it online. The civil judgment against me was vacated in March. The university system acknowledged the original investigation was based on fabricated evidence. They issued a formal apology. They offered to settle my counterclaim, reimburse my legal fees, compensate for damages. I accepted the apology, declined the settlement. I didn't want their money, I just wanted the record clear. My debt was eliminated, my name cleared. I could have rebuilt a career in tech, I didn't. I kept the logistics job. It was stable, predictable. I knew what was expected. Nobody was trying to destroy me. I dissolved Radley Industrial Technologies once the patent expired. Let the entity lapse. It had served its purpose. I got contacted by a journalist writing a book about tech fraud. She wanted to interview me, tell the full story. I declined. A documentary crew reached out a year later. Same thing. Redemption narrative, justice prevailing. I told them no. What would I say? That I won? I did, in the most technical sense. Brent was in prison. I was exonerated. The truth was public. But I'd lost something permanent. The ability to trust. the belief that partnerships meant something, the version of myself that could work alongside someone and believe in shared dreams. That person was gone, burned away by years of debt, isolation, and betrayal. I built a smaller life, controlled, bounded, with clear exit clauses. I work, save money, maintain my apartment. I have acquaintances, not friends, colleagues, not partners. Everything is transactional. Everything is documented. Everything has limits. It's not the life I imagined at 22, but it's mine, and nobody can take it from me. Last night I got a LinkedIn notification, connection request from Brent, out on parole apparently, working as a consultant in ethical business practices. His message: I know this is unexpected. I've had time to think about what I did, about what I destroyed. I was wrong, scared, ambitious, and stupid. I'm not asking forgiveness. I just want you to know I understand now. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I stared at it for a long time, then I deleted it. Not from anger, not because I couldn't forgive, but because there was nothing to say. The person he betrayed doesn't exist anymore, and the person I became has no use for his apology. I closed my laptop, turned off the lights, went to bed. Tomorrow I'll go to work, write clean code, solve defined problems, collect my paycheck, live a life that fits inside boundaries I control. It's not the life I wanted, but it's the one I built from the wreckage, and that's the only thing that can't be taken away. Sometimes I think about alternate versions, if I'd been more suspicious, if I'd checked the systems Brent built, if I'd noticed earlier. But that version of me would have been someone already betrayed, someone who started from distrust. I couldn't have built Campus Core as that person. The thing that made me vulnerable, trust, partnership, belief in shared dreams, was the same thing that made creation possible. Brent didn't just frame me for fraud. He demonstrated that trust itself could be weaponized, that belief in another person could be turned into a trap. So I don't regret being who I was. I regret that the world contains people like who Brent became. The final liquidation paperwork closed last month. The last remnants of Campus Core and EduCore, fragmented across companies that don't know what they bought. I kept one thing: the original code repository, the commits we made at 6 a.m. in the computer lab, exhausted and hopeful. I opened it last week, read through the history, saw our names next to every line. Fixed validation bug. This is going to change everything. Optimized housing algorithm. We're going to pull this off. Deployed to production, it actually works. I read it all, then I deleted it. Not from anger, from acceptance. That story ended. Those people, both versions, are gone. I made dinner, watched a movie I'd seen before. In the morning I went to work. That's the thing about revenge. It doesn't heal anything. It just proves you were right. And being right is a cold substitute for what you lost. But it's real. And I've learned to live with what's real. Some days, that's enough. Most days it has to be. Stories like this happen more often than we think. Subscribe if you want to hear the ones that usually stay unspoken. And if this story made you pause, a like helps the channel grow.